Sean, you're best known for your acting roles in The Bold and Beautiful, as well as Cobra Kai. You're an Emmy-winning producer, motivational speaker, life coach, and author. And Michelle, you're also an Emmy-winning producer, writer, director, speaker, and author.
So often people ask us, how do you do this? How do you stay together? How do you balance all the stuff that you're doing and two sets of kids and everything that you've overcome to still be together and happy? How do you do that?
It's one thing to play a role as a father. It's another thing to play a role as a father after you've actually been one. Needless to say, I was like, I'm dead, I'm getting in bed, throwing on Netflix, and we're ordering a pizza.
All right. Hey, welcome into Conscious Conversations. I'm your host, Nitin Garg, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Nick Palladino King.
Hey.
And we also have the pleasure of welcoming to the show today, Sean and Michele Kanen. Hi, Sean. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Sean, you're best known for your acting roles in The Bold and Beautiful, as well as Cobra Kai. You're an Emmy-winning producer, motivational speaker, life coach, and author. And Michelle, you're also an Emmy-winning producer, writer, director, speaker, and author. Just to give the audience a little bit of background about both of you, especially since we're going to be diving into a conversation around relationships today. Sean and Michelle, you have successfully combined two families amidst being in all the pressures of Hollywood and being in limelight. You have written a book called Way of the Cobra for couples and the journey that couples go on and our relationships. And you share lessons learned and secrets that lead to a happy, healthy, and successful relationship. So we're really looking forward to having that conversation with you today. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
As we get started, we love to just have the audience get to know you a little bit. And if they don't already know you through all the amazing work you've already been doing in your lives, I'm curious just if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, and then also tell us a little bit about what led you to writing this book. What led you to, going from being in Hollywood and being on the successful shows and movies that you have been involved with to actually diving into writing a book about relationships and helping enlighten couples?
Well, Michelle's been integral in the first two books in the Way of the Cobra series, which is Way of the Cobra and Welcome to the Kumite. And we'd worked together before on Studio City, which is the show that I created. We won the Emmy for Outstanding Limited Drama, and we knew that we wanted to write together again. And I knew I wanted to do a third book in the Way of the Cobra series, and I knew I wanted to do it about relationships. And I think it necessitates having two voices. Relationships are based on two people's perceptions, and I didn't want to just have my perception of it. I thought it was really important to have both sides. And so Michelle, it was kind of tough pinning her down because she's the only person I know who's probably as busy as I am, but I finally got her to agree to do this. And, it worked out really well.
It was not really much of an agreement, or a decision for me, because the last time we worked together, we won an Emmy. So I was like, of course, we're going to do this. It'll be a slam dunk. It's just when. So we finally...
I don't know if it was a slam dunk. It was definitely a lot of work, but yeah. It was a good collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife is probably, when she listens to this episode, she would go, where was I in that episode? But I'm glad we have at least the two of you here to represent both ends of that conversation.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was really great because so often people ask us, how do you do this? How do you stay together? How do you balance all the stuff that you're doing and two sets of kids and, everything that you've overcome to still be together and happy? How do you do that? And, I thought Sean pitched it like, if we put it in a book, it'll save us time. And it really has. So, it's really fun and exciting to, put it all down on paper and be able to say, here, look, just follow it. This is what we did. We're not experts and we're not giving anybody advice. And, this is really a book that's for relationships.
Well, we kind of are giving people advice.
Well, we are, but we're...
that's kind of the essence of the book.
Yes, but not advice about problems. This is a book on how to level up, how to take your relationship to the next level, because we strive to look for what's right in our relationship instead of focusing on what's wrong. And so we really wanted to reflect that in our book.
The first two books, Way of the Cobra and Welcome to the Kumite, were very successful. We hear from people all the time that they've been able to affect tremendous changes in their lives. And so we thought, why don't we take these strategies and apply them to a relationship or the pursuit of finding the right person for a relationship. And, it worked out really well. We used the same structure as the first two books, which is that, you're in the dojo. Cobra is an acronym. It's formed from the words character, optimization, balance, respect, and abundance. And what's different in this book is, as I said, because relationships require two people, we now have two senseis, each with a different point of view and advice from, a slightly different perspective from life experience.
And what's really fun in the book is that since we have, oftentimes there's his version, my version, and then the truth. And so we've delineated in the book with separate fonts in little boxes, his version, my version, and then the rest of the truth. Unfortunately, well, maybe fortunately, throughout the book, there's not a whole lot of it because we really do intersect a lot on our philosophy, and a lot of our philosophies is the same thing. It's just told a different way. So there's one part in the book called "Blame Does Not Exist in This Dojo," and we really, that comes from our sense of nobody's right and nobody's wrong in the relationship. It's just how do you get to it should be problem solution, not problem blame solution. So blaming is shaming, and we try to stay out of that. That's one of the key factors in a successful relationship.
I'm glad you just brought that in, Michelle, about the shame, because that's something my wife and I have worked on a lot recently too, is not blaming, shaming, or complaining. I think those three right there are just like the killers. I'm really interested here. As researching you two, you're almost like the real world version of the Brady Bunch. I don't know if that lands, but I'd be really interested to kind of understand, one, like how you made that all work together. I mean, a relationship's challenging enough with two people. And then what got you into relationship coaching? You're so busy and full and you're out there acting and producing. It seems to me like the relationship piece would be like, most people would say, that's not important. I'm interested in those two aspects of your family dynamics and where you're at with your teachings.
I think that the decision to unify our lives together, when you find the right person, it doesn't always come in the package that you imagine it in your head. And when I saw Michelle, I knew that she was the person for me. And when she told me, "Hey, I've got 4 kids," it didn't scare me off because...
Which terrified me at first, because I was like,
we definitely had a lot of challenges. There were a lot of growing pains. I always joke that I've never served in the military, so I don't have a combat medal, but I think anyone who's raised 4 pre-teenage girls under one roof deserves some kind of accommodation. But it was a tremendous learning experience for me, and really matured me a lot as a man. And, as an actor too. It's one thing to play a role as a father. It's another thing to play a role as a father after you've actually been one.
Yeah.
And you can be a terrific actor, and if you've never been a father, you have to create your idea of what certain things are like, as opposed to drawing from the referential Rolodex that you've acquired from actual experience. So there's nothing like real experience. As far as why we got into the coaching, I love coaching people. My personal excellence coaching has been something that's been incredibly rewarding for me. There aren't too many feelings that are better than when you are able to significantly help somebody with their life. And, Michelle has seen me over the last couple of years become very involved with my coaching and my speaking, and she has seen that it's really it's fulfilled me, you know, in a way that I didn't expect it to. And for me, it's every bit as important as my acting is. And so we've begun doing this together with couples, and it also keeps us kind of in the trenches, so to speak, so that we're continuing to learn and hone our game so that we can better carry the message of our book.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much of the philosophy of Wave the Cobra is to, you know,
give it back,
learn, grow, give back. And, you know, that's the way, in the way that I learn is I learn by teaching. So I would take information and to, you know, give it back. And, you know, I love getting feedback. You know, we're not perfect and we're not professionals. We're just two crazy kids in Hollywood trying to make it work and keep it all together. And, you know, I learn every day. And so as that happens, you know, it's very ingrained in me to be of service. And we, you know, to be part of a community, to succeed is to see your entire community succeed. And so we want to, you know, help people out. A lot of times relationships have these pivotal moments where you just get tired of bickering, or there's an apathy that sets in, and that, you know, that apathy is what we are fighting against. That if you just take these measures and keep your relationship alive in one way or another, it will continue to grow, and that helps everybody, the kids, the neighborhood. You know, breakups and divorce are really destructive to the human spirit and the human psyche, because, you know, there's this loss that nobody really is effectively dealing with. And so, you know, oftentimes if you just tackle the problem on a day-to-day basis and figure out the little things you can do to keep your relationship alive. Like, for example, for us, there's a few things that are really key. One is communication, one is a sense of humor, and the third is to minimize resentment. And if you can do those three things, you can weather any storm, because you're always anchoring each other, and, you know, you're a true partnership.
Yeah, that was commitment, sense of humor, and then minimizing resentment.
It's
Communication.
Yeah. So there's tools in the books for effective communication. Like, for example, I can't tell you how many times I've heard, "I'm not a mind reader, so I don't know." And I was like, he's not a mind reader. In fact, I'm going to give you this tool, which is the day meter, where I just show up and say, "Look, today I have 20%. And so he knows that if I only have 20%, not to expect 100% from me, and not, and he, you know, oftentimes it's that we aren't able to communicate.
You know, I'll give you an example. Michele just got done directing this really terrific TV series that I act in, and she wound up getting this set up after I had set up something that I was doing for my show. So long story short, we did a night shoot, which required me to shoot until about 4 a.m. And then I had to be on set at 8:45 for mine. So
you're thriving. You're optimal at this point.
Right. So once I got through it, I came home and I was, needless to say, I was like, I'm dead. I'm getting in bed, getting in my underwear, throwing on Netflix, and we're ordering a pizza. And she said the same thing. And so we were both sort of at the same place where we needed a recharge. And we just, you know, basically spent the day in bed, had pizza, and watched Netflix. And it was exactly what we needed. And then, you know, back into the fight the next day. So, you know, you have days when you're both chomping at the bit, ready to give 100% and set the world on fire.
Right.
But it's communication. And sometimes one person is and the other person isn't. Maybe they're not feeling well. Maybe they're, for whatever reason. And that's part of being in a relationship, is that the other one picks up the slack.
Right. And in that moment when he was saying, "Look, I have 20%, I'm dead, I need to get in bed," you know, there is a side of, you know, coming off the high of completing a project and wanting to, you know, hear all the accolades. But in that moment, the most exciting thing is that he's like, "I just want to tune the world out and be with you."
Yeah.
And that was, to me, it was so much more rewarding that he wanted to spend that moment with me and just
you and the pizza. the pizza too.
But mostly.
Food is always
We
important.
talk about another thing we talk about in the book, guys, is certain fallacies and myths that people labor under. And one myth, for instance, is, well, monogamy isn't natural. Well, neither's toilet paper. Well, for all of us too, right? So and another one is that love conquers all. Love does not conquer all. And yes, you have to be in love, but it's not enough. You have to be.
You have to show up every day.
You have to show up every day, and your ships have to be sailing in the same direction. Mm-hmm. If you have two people in a relationship, and one is like, hey, I really want to take this job on the East Coast, and the other one is like, hey, I really want to, do research at a college up in Northern California, but you guys have to have common goals. That doesn't mean you can't overcome challenges that are temporary, but you have to both ultimately want the same things. Now, here's the caveat to that. You have to also protect your own personal identity within the relationship. In other words, you can't allow who you are as an individual to disappear into the relationship. And that's a really fine balance. It's an art form. How do I be a team player in the relationship so that the relationship is firing on all pistons while not losing my own identity? There's certain things that I want out of life, maybe professionally, that Michele doesn't, and that she does, vice versa. And so we recognize those, support them for each other,
right,
while still supporting the common goals of the relationship.
And schedule them. You have to be an advocate for yourself. And, you have to have, the safety net to be able to express yourself. And the only way that happens is by finding communication to be an effective tool. So oftentimes are kind of just a little bit hesitant to throw their emotions out there, or they go the opposite way and they just lead with their emotions all the time. And it's like this emotional, and eventually it becomes like, oh, I can't deal with emotion anymore. Can you just logic? So you have to strike that balance where you're communicating, where it's not just one thing that's leading the conversation. And when you can do that, and you can effectively take the emotion out of things and say, okay, this is our plan. And, we'll modify as things go along, but at least we're on a path. It really helps relationships to move forward and to, kind of alleviate the resentment. One of the things that we do for resentment is I have this saying that I say, I try to be good, but he makes me do bad things. So when I find that my resentment is building up a little bit, I don't hang on to it. I will, in the moment, say, look, this is how I feel about this. This is what's going to happen. And if it doesn't resolve, then I prank him in some really uncomfortable way, like shut the brightness off on his phone or turn the seat heater on the car while he's driving. And then he realizes, okay, I gotta deal with something that she's irritated about.
Something to pay attention to.
Yes.
Right.
In a fun.
So I have a question for you to go a little bit deeper on what you mentioned around, especially having this common sense of common goals and communication is such a, it encompasses so much. There's so many layers to communication. There's what we're talking about. There's how we talk about it. Especially when you were talking about this sort of, charting a common course together.
Right.
What are some things that have helped you? You both have a sort of a similar career, but you have very specific things you have gone after. What are some things that have kind of kept you aligned, and how have you navigated when you did find yourself in a different place? I think the audience could really benefit from that.
I have to give this one to Sean. He's a poli-sci major, and he came up with this strategy called the State of the Union. So in January, we sit down and we say, okay, this is where we're at. This is a new year. What are we doing for the year? And then we kind of chart our course on there, and we, have it out in the beginning of the year, and we make decisions based on that.
Right. I mean, but we're also adaptable and flexible. I mean, I think that what was it? It was who wrote the Origin of the Species? Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin said, it's not the strongest of the species that survives. It's not the smartest of the species. It's the one that's most adaptable to change.
True.
And so we try and have goals that we want to achieve, but are very lean and mean and able to adapt because life has other plans frequently when you have goals.
Right.
And this is a big thing I talk about in Welcome to the Kumite, which is the second book in the series. One of the great ironies in life is if you want to achieve results, ignore them. Now that sounds oxymoronic, but if you focus on the process that it takes to achieve the results, which is a combination of taking right actions and habits, you don't need to worry about the results. They will come. They might not come exactly when you want them to come, and they might not look exactly like you anticipate it, but over the overarching span of time, they will.
That's actually, frankly, almost a direct quote, from the Bhagavad Gita, which is very much like one of the core philosophies in the Hindu.
He lives in wisdom, who's
himself
in all in himself, whose love for the Lord of love. I mean, that's my mantra. That's what from the Bhagavad Gita. That is what I meditate on the passage that when Arjuna asks, tell me about a wise man and what he thinks of. And so I'm right there with you on that. Stay out of the.
If anyone needs the book, here's what we're talking about.
Bhagavad Gita.
And also the aspect of just focusing on the work and not getting so attached to the results, which is what you were, specifically referring to. Is like, hey, we put in our daily work, that the daily deed, what we're working towards, and the results will unfold as they're meant to unfold.
Exactly.
Sometimes in our favor and sometimes not.
And additionally, we're very big on keeping your word. So there's times that we disagree, but we come to a resolution, and maybe it's something that I actively am against. But once I give him my word, I will show up cheerfully and do what I gave my word for. And oftentimes in relationships, we compromise, but then show up with a bad attitude, and it makes it worse. So for me, there's things that I don't want to do, like, I don't know, what's an example?
I don't think we have to get specific.
I mean, like, for example, when I offer to read lines with him, it's.
I rarely ask you to do that. I rarely ask.
Not true. I read all the time.
This is relationship live happening right here.
So like reading lines, for me, it's memorization, and it's reading and listening, and that just is like an ice pick in my eye. But when I say I'm going to do it, I show up. I have a good attitude, and I do it. And we end up having fun doing it. And then he does things for me. Like, listen to me talk about, tech specs on a new computer that I want, and he glazes over, but he does it, and he listens to me and like talks it out with me. And, I realize that, if you do things and you're true to your word, you put stuff in your bank, and it's a series of debits and credits where you have this, we always say, I got enough in the bank that I know she's going to show up for me.
Yeah.
And so it takes away the mystery and the kind of the resentment and the anxiety. And relationships shouldn't be anxiety provoking. There's times that, you have to do something and you just really need your partner to show up for you. And I never wonder. Sean always shows up for me.
When you have a great relationship, it is an unbelievable force multiplier and source of strength. I have achieved a great deal in the last several years, more than probably I have in 15 years before that, and I largely attribute that to not just being
He's trying to say me.
But not just you, but there's a really
There's a comfort.
There's a great feeling when you're in a relationship and you draw strength from it, and you know that your partner is going to show up for you. I mean, it's
predictably show.
Yeah, it's like you have each other's back.
We talk about in the book
that core sense.
We talk about in the book that, you know, when there's something that we really do, like when we really have to kind of suck it up and kick ass and do something, we're sort of like Wonder Twin powers, you know, whatever. And when Michele and I are on the same wavelength, directing our powers for good in the same direction, it's pretty formidable. I wouldn't bet against us.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we have...
Yeah, it's like when 1 + 1 becomes 11.
Absolutely. That's what I mean by the force multiplier. And it's not just Sean and Michele. You can have in any relationship.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's true.
You know, but sometimes you hear people, and it almost seems like the relationship's like an anchor around their neck.
Yeah.
And it's like either fix it or get out of it.
I mean, the thing is that if you can't speak fondly and affectionately about your partner, no one else will.
Absolutely. And you know, I'll tell guys something too. You know, when, you know, if your significant other is speaking badly about you, especially in front of other men, it's like ringing the dinner bell, saying she doesn't respect him, and so, hey, you know, I got a glide path to taking a shot at the title, and the same thing. It goes the same way. So it's like, you know, all you're doing is shooting yourself in the foot when you're speaking openly to anyone else about your dirty laundry. Right. It's a terrible thing to do.
Right. And it's one thing when you're really in crisis and you have a very big issue and you go to somebody for advice or a confidant. It's another about
when you're humiliating or trying to shame somebody in public.
And just airing your personal laundry. And, you know, it's in relationships where there's adversarial and there's a lot of tension and there's a lot of resentment. Those are the easiest to fix. And in the book, we say something about fighting. That, you know, we talk a lot about fighting because fighting is important, and it's actually good for the relationship because it helps you to kind of, like, the first half of fighting is relieving anxiety and emotion. So if you can realize that and train yourself to just let the emotion pass and get through that, and then say, okay, now we're exhausted from the emotion, let's actually talk about what's going on here and see what logically and approach it to. You know, half the problem is feeling heard. Like, each of you needs to feel heard. At the end of the day, it's not about that you have a difference of opinion. 9 times out of 10, you have the same opinion. You've been together for so long. You know the same stuff. You like the same stuff. It's just presentation, and it's about being heard. So if you can take a moment, take a breath, and draw straws if you have to go who goes first, and talk about, like, here's what's going on, present it. And the set of facts you're about to hear may be different. You may not agree with them. It's fine, because it's an opinion. There are no wrong opinions. Everybody's entitled to an opinion. And if you afford your partner the right to have an opinion, right, whether you agree with it or not, and hear it out, you will then be afforded that opportunity too. And you will find that just allowing each other to have a different opinion will then find some common ground, and you can agree on the common ground, and the resentment will melt away because you'll both be heard. And that is
and you both coach, you know, so like one of the things that I often share with folks is, you know, when we do have these opinions, right? One, just to assume that is that person's truth.
Right. It is.
In that moment.
Right
or wrong. We don't have to agree or disagree, but that is that person's truth in that moment, and get curious about it. So if I do disagree, hey, help me understand more. Let's go a layer deeper.
Exactly.
Because then through that, maybe we come to some common understanding and alleviate what's created the tension in the first place.
Right. Exactly.
I'm curious if you go about that in a different way, or if there's a different approach you take.
I mean, we basically draw straws. I mean, we are pretty parallel in our thinking, and, you know, if we disagree, we will generally, I let him go first because he's going first.
You're so kind.
And then once he gets it off his chest, then I can go back and say, okay, I understand where you're coming from. here's where I'm coming from. And where I'm aligning with you, which ultimately I do align with him, it's just that there's nuances. And then he's like, okay, I get it. And then, we don't really have major differences. And that's how we when you have,
No, I don't think we do.
when the inmates outnumber the guards and you have kids that are a front row audience to what's going on with you in a new relationship, like you have to be very much aligned. And so there's things that he defers to me and there's things that I defer to him.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're sort of like best idea wins, and and I believe that in order to be a good leader, you have to be able to be a supporting follower at times.
Right.
If you look at the military, anyone who becomes a leader at one point had been an enlisted man or woman who had to take orders and follow. Right. And if you can't do that, you certainly can't be a good leader. Exactly. And so based on our skill sets, which are different, Michelle and I, we're both producers, but we have different skill sets that are both highly effective,
right?
But you probably wouldn't want to use my skill set for certain things, and my skill set probably works a little better for other areas, and we recognize that and just defer it and say, and that transfers into our day-to-day life as well. I have no problem saying, I need your help.
Right.
Same. I probably say it way too much, as a matter of fact. Just because Michelle has a vast amount of skill sets.
It's job security for me. I love that. And he's like,
that's great. That's great to hear, Sean, because you come across to me as a very strong, confident, masculine man who has also learned to defer and listen to his wife. And I think that's a really beautiful example of how we can be both of those things.
He's really scared of me.
I think every healthy relationship, the husband should have just a little bit of fear from his wife.
Just a smooch?
No, you're right. I mean, I value Michelle's opinion more than almost anyone's.
I do too.
Do you know what I mean? And so she's an incredible asset to me, and it's been a good lesson for me as a guy that can have a rather forceful personality sometimes, that I'm aware of the fact that I have to be careful not to impose that upon people just because I can, and listen and be open to hearing other ideas, even if they're conflicting. And
I think maybe it's because I've taken the approach to let him impose until he falls off a cliff. And then I'm like, you don't say. And then he gets tired of that. And so we've learned over the years to kind of like go to that edge. And, Sean is extremely confident. Like my mother always said that I was a lot and that, I needed to find a real strong guy to rein me in. And I have. And, we really, we could have butt heads and, had epic battles, but, we do have epic battles. Sean calls them a bench clearer. And then we're back to one. Because part of that...
But we don't hold it in, you know what I mean?
It's like we just throw it all out there, and we just, at the end of it, we realize that we're together, we're staying together, and that, we try not to...
I always joke, I was like, you got one way out of this marriage, and it's in a body bag.
Yeah.
So, you get pissed off and walk out the door.
Do or die.
You ain't going anywhere, neither am I.
I give him the choice, either a body bag or a coffin, one of the two. Yeah. Natural causes or he gets killed.
See, it's comments like that. The other day, Michelle was so tired, and she was in the bathtub, and I was in bed, but I couldn't really see her. And I was like, Michelle, and I didn't hear anything. And I was like, Michelle, and I didn't hear anything. I came in, and her eyes were closed, and I grabbed her and pulled her out of the tub. And I literally said, as I was doing it, nobody's ever going to believe that I didn't drown you. Get out of this tub right now. Because I say things like that, the body bag thing on the interview.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like,
what I like about the body bag comment, and tell me you guys think about this, is if we shift relationship, and this is something I've learned to do after 7 years of marriage, is once I was able to shift it from there's a way out coming from a divorced family to this is a death do us part situation.
Right.
It changes it from a finite thing to an infinite thing. And then there's no losing the game as long as we continue to play and stay in it together. And it's like, oh shit, we don't have to have this figured out today. We got
Yeah.
10 years. And
Absolutely.
it's done
No.
something in me where it's given me more of like
Yeah.
I'm not looking for the exit. And as a result, I'm looking for these solutions. So I know you're
It's
saying
not,
that
it's
tongue in
not a
cheek, but
50
that
yard,
really lands on
it's
me.
a marathon.
Exactly.
You know?
Yep.
You don't always have to figure everything
and
out.
it's not even that, it's a relay race where you keep handing off the torch, and one of you is leading and one of you is following, and knowing that you have to trust the guy behind you and the guy in front of you to win the race it's an art form, and it's giving up to the higher power.
Yeah, there's a bit of surrender, I think, in every healthy relationship.
For sure.
And humans generally don't like to surrender. We like to be in control. And the quicker you figure out that control is an illusion,
right.
And I always tell people, if you don't believe that, all you have to do is go outside and take a quick look at the sun, which is a dying star, and it's going to someday go supernova and swallow the earth and rip the fabric of it apart. And there's nothing other than God Almighty that can stop that. You still think you're in control. And so the only thing we can control are our responses to external stimuli.
Right.
And it takes a lot of pressure off, and you learn that the surrender philosophy is not one of weakness. It's one of strength and understanding.
Right. And it's also can be very selfish because, you kind of have to come from the point of view of you're going to do this one way or the other. You can do it kicking and screaming, or you can do it laughing and joking. But either way, you're doing it. So the selfish part is I don't want to go through the pain of being dragged along. I'd rather go through the joy of skipping along with my partner. So if you strive for that and keep that in mind every time that you're doing something, it really helps you to realize that you can have a happy and joyful life, and your relationship can be a source of joy and pride rather than a source of, wow, I got to do this work and I got to bring this guy along. And, it really changes the dynamic and how you interact with each other.
Michele, what do you find in your experience that tends to create more of those drags, or where people might get stuck in that mentality or approach?
It's life is work. Unfortunately, it is work because we have to eat. So you have to find food. It doesn't just fall in your lap. So knowing that and accepting that there is an amount of work to just living, but you can make it fun. We fortunately don't have to go out and kill our meals anymore. We can go to a grocery store and get them, and we can. Sean's happy place is the grocery store. He's like a wizard in there. I hate the grocery store, but when we go together, it's fun. And I tend to lag along the aisles, and Sean will be like, "Come on, we gotta get out of here." And keeps me on track. And so it's fun to get home and see all the stuff we have. And then it's like, who's gonna put it away? But it's like, oh look, we got this. Ooh, let's do this. And you just approach things as interaction. And you value the time together because, we get pulled apart so many times. Take those moments of doing things together. When you're dating, you go and do stuff. And you have
I was just going to talk about that. That's amazing you just said that.
I know.
Bruce
You're connected.
Bruce Lee, besides being, unbelievable martial artist, was a phenomenal philosopher. And he had a book called Striking Thoughts. And he says, when people start dating, they do all sorts of crazy, fun, interesting things, and they don't get to know each other. And I used to always say to Michele, I can take anybody to Paris for the weekend and have a great time.
I think Taylor said that.
Babe, I'm 58 years old. Taylor can shut up. All right. My point is, you can obscure getting to know someone and with doing exciting things, but if you can learn to have fun and connect in the mundane, then you've really got something. And when Michele and I first met, I was going through a period where I wasn't working a lot as an actor, and so I was working with an insurance company where I was leading these seminars. And I invited her to come to this insurance seminar that
On
I
the
was
first
giving.
date.
Not exactly the most interesting, sexy thing. And we literally had fun. You know, I was up there talking and I could see her and we're looking at each other. And we just had a really fun time. It's something that would ostensibly be like zero fun.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, then it's real easy to have fun when you're in Bora Bora for the week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the captive audience moments where we are driving in the car together, because then I have his full and undivided attention, especially if he's driving.
It's because she removed the locks on the door of the car, so I can.
That's right. So I wait to those moments to have conversations that, you know, are gonna, you know, like are a little tough, like that we have to decide.
Which is why I like to take public transportation and not get in the car.
Safety in numbers.
Yeah. But, you know, but we have those conversations, and you have to not be afraid to talk about things with your partner, because they're your partner. And the more you can do that, the more trust builds up and the less frequent. Like, I can't remember the last time we had a like really uncomfortable, like, I'm not sure if our relationship is going to survive conversation. No. I mean, we really
we got all those out in the first
5 weeks. Yeah. So
and even this even the insurance presentation event that you mentioned and having the first date there is kind of pointing to this aspect of like, I'm bringing this person into my life, right? And similarly, Michele, I'm sure you have examples of where you brought Sean into your life and said, hey, this is my life, can you be with this?
Right.
That's what I really read from that.
So I took Sean, and wait for it, because it's going to be a really hot moment. I took my child's
he's scanning
title at school with all the other parents. His first, where it was a 2.5 hour dance recital with kids that are semi-talented. You know, it's school, so it's not really like everybody gets to go. And
they could have had my ticket.
Yes, it was amazing. And he sat through it just like, what? And to his credit, the performer showed up and he clapped for every single kid.
Sometimes you got to show up,
because he was happy that, you know, these kids were and the kids were putting themselves out there, and I just was completely. It was unexpected for me that he would, you know, like. Because Sean's done plays, and he also did stand-up. He does stand-up comedy, and so being on stage, there's something to that. And he just really, I was so impressed that he just, even though these kids were, some were bouncing
green. Let's say they were green.
They were green. He just, you know, applauded them, and I was like, wow, like that's great. And you know, and then all of a sudden, people knew who he was in the audience, and they kind of were like, oh my God, it's Sean. And he just, with grace and finesse, listened to everyone, shook kids' hands and signed autographs, and just was a star. And, you know, really had a moment where, you know, my daughter came off the stage and they were like, oh, Sean, and he's like, it's her moment. And really was humbling and made her feel so important. And now they have such a great relationship. And, you know, he's able to be this, you know, great father figure for my daughter, and she's an actress, and he just, you know, it's really fun to see that they're so connected.
Yeah, sounds like that really points to the C in the Cobra, you know, the character. Absolutely. Like getting a sense for the character.
Character, everything.
One of the things you talk about in the book is the 5 pillars of a great relationship. I'm curious if you can speak to that, and our audience can learn from
well, the 5
you
pillars
really laid out there.
The Cobra are character, optimization, balance, respect, and abundance. Character is the most important thing. Character is who we are at our core. It's doing the right thing when no one's looking, when there's nothing to be gained. Optimization refers to making the best decision with the information that you have at the time that it's necessary to take action. You know, not getting paralyzed with indecision.
Or letting things drag out and fester. It's you know, it's better to make uncomfortable decisions, right or wrong, and roll with them, than it is to put them off and let them fester within the relationship.
I'm a big fan of making decisions rather than having decisions made for me. And, that means sometimes that you make the wrong one.
Right.
But then that dovetails into the whole thing about, not viewing failures as failures, but viewing them as teachers. Balance is, it's like Mr. Miyagi said. I mean, balance is critical. Balance in a relationship is everything. I mean, what good is it if you make $1 million a year, but your primary relationships are withering on the vine because you don't have the time to attend? But conversely, you can have great relationships with your family, but if you don't have financial security, ultimately, it creates a sense of anxiety,
right,
and ultimately fear, which is destructive. So it's finding that balance.
Right.
Balance is also a young couple deciding we want to own a home by the time we're 30. Well, that might mean that you both have to work a job and not see each other as much as you want. So for a while, you're making a calculated decision that things are going to be out of balance as far as the amount of time you can spend together because you're trying to achieve this greater goal. But it's calculated balance.
Right.
Respect speaks for itself.
The joint vision behind that.
There we go. Sorry about that. Respect begins with respect for yourself. It is impossible for other people, including your partner, to respect you if you're not demonstrating respect for yourself, respect for them, respect for the relationship, and respect for other people.
And respect for your decisions. Everybody's relationship is different. There isn't one way to have a relationship. And, when you decide, we have this thing called the relationship rule book, and we start that right from the beginning. And those little activities that you go on and that you do are about crafting the rules for the relationship. Like, for example, if you're very active and social, having a very active social life is great, but you need to make time for your relationship, and you shouldn't expect every outing to be with all your friends. You do need to have time together to socialize together. And conversely, if you like to be one-on-one and you like to be alone and your partner is social, you need to realize that you need to step out of yourself from time to time and be involved. You can't just say, okay, you go do it. Like, I'm going to be home, you go do it. You can't, because it creates distance in the relationship. Because although your partner is fulfilling their social need, you're not part of it. And eventually your partner starts to look at you and think, why aren't you showing up for me? I stay home with you, but why aren't you going out? And so as uncomfortable as it is, you need to evolve a little bit and say, okay, I'm taking this one for the team, because when I'm home, she's home with me.
Definitely something I've had to learn, because it takes like an act of Congress to get me to go do something. Because, I think a lot of times, people think when you're an actor, you live this really exciting life. And I think it's a lot like being a cop. I think it's a lot of mundane with flashes of really exciting. My job is great, but it's like any other job. You have good days, you have bad days, you have interpersonal things, blah, blah, blah. But then your boss says, I need you to go to Monte Carlo to accept an award on behalf of the show. Exciting, right? But that's once in a blue moon.
Right.
But mostly, I'm at home at night learning my lines, waking up super early in the morning and going to the studio, not tremendously exciting. So for me, I like to stay home when I'm not working. And, Michelle gets invited to all sorts of stuff. I do too, but I generally say no a lot. Yeah. Michelle likes to go. And I have had to realize that there's times that I need to say yes, not because of the event. I need to say yes because she wants to go and it's important to her, and I need to be there for her.
You do. But and there's times that I take it for granted. I mean, Sean's like a mutant. Like, he never ages, he never gets sick, and he can memorize 80 pages of dialogue.
I thought I looked good for 40. I'm looking at Sean like,
right?
Am I going to look like that at 60? I don't know. I got to step my game up
this month. Can you believe it?
I know. I was thinking that.
So I take that for granted at times because, I just think, oh.
Because I get tired sometimes.
Yeah, and then why would he get tired? He doesn't do that.
I can't leave, Mom. I'm tired. I got to get me some rest.
And so we go through periods where we're super active, and then there's this period where we need to recharge, and I'm, even though I have to like curb my ADD, I will stay at home and recharge with him and shut everything out for a couple days, sometimes a week. And it's great because at first it's really hard for me to, my mom guilt, like I should be doing something. And then I realize I am doing something. I'm recharging my marriage.
Yeah.
I'm recharging my husband, recharging my relationship, and I'm plugging into the source of how I have the energy to do all these things. So,
Yeah. I'd love to kind of reflect and summarize a lot of what you guys have put out there, if I could, and maybe tell me where I'm off or where we maybe want to kind of close it up with. But what I'm hearing is a lot of consciousness in here, a lot of spiritual thoughts woven in of there's an end game that you're working towards together, and that the two of you have decided we're on this journey and we're going to go in the same direction. And that may not mean you're doing the same thing, and it may not mean that you're both excited about it at the same time, but there's almost like a tether as you're kind of moving together. You've also decided like you're in it for the long haul.
right.
And choosing, I heard you talk about right action in there, which I really liked. And that's been a big theme of right action doesn't mean doing what you want necessarily. It might be doing what your partner wants or what's right for the relationship.
Absolutely.
I'll give you, and then I've also heard a lot of,
I was offered a movie a while back, and the thematically, the movie was about couples swinging and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm lucky that I'm at a point in my career where I can be a lot more discerning with the things that I do. And I just thought to myself, what is this going to bring to my life professionally that is going to be so great compared to what possible peril is it going to put my relationship with Michele in? And it was a very split-second quick decision to say no. And it was interesting because as actors, you spend a lot of time looking for work as opposed to doing it. And you get so excited when you find work. And it was one of those things where I felt really, really good about just being able to say no, because it was what was best for the relationship. And it felt good to be putting my relationship above my career.
Right. Yep. That's true.
Yeah, and that speaks to a lot of the stability you were talking about before of anchoring and having that support. And I've also heard a lot of talking about really getting clear on what your guys' desires are, boundaries, rules, and sitting down as a team and really going over those and establishing those. And I think if we could take kind of all of that and implement that into our lives, it's really, really helpful. Not even just in intimate relationships, but with your coworkers, with your kids, with your friends. I mean, if you take a step back, you guys are really talking about relationship. What I'd love for you to just kind of bring us in for a landing and maybe some key tips, some key pieces of advice for our listeners to take with them as they, go implement.
One thing that I think is really important in everything that we do is to continue to cultivate your self-awareness. It's imperative that as human beings, we continue to evolve and refine who we are, our relationship with ourselves, our ability to relate to the outside world and to other people. And the way to do that is to get in touch with your authentic self. And my TEDx talk, which is coming out in about 3 weeks, is about the journey of unbecoming. And I talk about that, from the time we're born, society and our family is pushing us to become a winner, to become a success, to become someone. And maybe it's about unbecoming, getting rid of all the crap that we learn to become the most self-aware person you can be in your relationship and in your day-to-day life.
And also, I think to draw from a source of pride about your relationship. I know there's this story how Sean has this friend who's kind of a tough guy, and he kept inviting us to come and stay with him and come visit. So finally we went to stay with him, and he says, "Oh, look here, I have these 2 couches for you." And we were like, So we ended up, it was late, so we stayed. And in the morning, he came down and walked by, and we were asleep, but we were holding hands across the couch. And so he made fun of us about it, and he was like, "You guys, you're just holding hands." And I turned around and I was like, "Yeah, that's adorable. I think that it's so sweet that we do that." And a lot of times people see, like, when I talk about Sean, I'm like, effusive, and I gush over him because, I really do look up to him. Like, I really do find this sense of joy. And I also remember that when you first met, it was, this elation and this amazing joy. And it's like you connected with this person in a way you've never connected with anybody else. And that's your magnetic north. And that person is the only person on the planet that knows that and that shares that experience with you. And that's what the tether is. It's not to each other, it's to that moment. And if you can remember that every time that your partner is pulling you back, it's to that moment. It's not to a subordinate position. It's to this moment of profound joy. That's what a relationship is about.
Man, that was cool.
Yeah, and plus, once you read our book, you can tell people you have a black belt in relationships.
Right. I'm sorry, guys. My iPad is dying.
It's all good. We're coming in. We're coming in for a landing here. Man, I mean, there's so much to digest here and dissect and take away and learn. And I just really appreciate the two of you sharing and spreading this knowledge and spreading your wisdom. We will put links in the show to your book, to your social accounts. Anything you have coming up that you want our listeners to know about that they can check out or access between you?
We just wanted to check out the book. We're really proud of it. We think it's got the ability to help a lot of people.
Did you just cover my face?
I did, right there. Got a little. And I have my TEDx talk is going to be coming out, and people can hear about that on social. And I just want to thank you guys and wish you both a wonderful Thanksgiving, and hope we have the opportunity to sit down with you again. This was really wonderful. It was like talking to a couple of friends.
And if anybody resonates with the book and they want to write a review on Amazon, we would love that. And if you want to discuss the book, go to our website, wayofthecobra.com, and you can sign up for counseling. And Sean and I do we do coaching. Yep. So we're happy to talk about it. You can, we answer our DMs personally. I'm at Michele.Kanen, and Sean is Sean.Kanen on Instagram.
Yep.
Great.
All right, guys.
Excellent. Heck yeah. Thanks so much. We appreciate you so much.
All the best. Thank you, buddy. Both of you guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.